Today, turning net zero on its head. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Today, I'm joined by Robyn. And Robyn, we're going to talk about climate change, that amazingly complex, difficult, uncomfortable subject that nobody really wants to talk about.
Oh, yes, we are. And it's going to be difficult and hard, but we're going to try our best.
Yeah, and look, I think it's important. I've had this view for a long time that the ideological polarisation that we've seen across the debate, both here and around the world, is getting in the way of making good, sensible policy decisions, right? And so what I'm always trying to do is to try and understand what the real issues are and also trying to think through where that should take us, right? And so I'd like to sort of do a little bit of that today, but why don't we just start with, why am I talking to you about climate change?
Why me? Well, I used to be an environmental scientist and a public educator in environmental science. And in fact, one of my biggest projects I did was public education on climate change in particular. Now that was 30 years ago that I did that, but that was when it all started. So I've kept up with everything since then, and I have changed careers in between, but I'm still completely committed to the environment politically and, personally as well. So,
And I think you make a really, really interesting point. This is not a new thing, right? And I was actually working in the finance sector in the UK 30 years ago, and I actually led a project for a particular financial services organisation trying to get their head around what the environment and what all those things actually meant for its business, right? So that was 30 years ago. I mean,
exactly.
This has been going on for a long, long time. And my own sense, I don't know what you think, is that we seem to spin our wheels a lot of the time, and we keep talking about this stuff, but actually the distance between time we've got left to make some really important decisions and disaster ahead is getting narrower and narrower. That's my own perspective.
Yeah, I understood that you felt that way. So I've been trying to think around it to see how I can look at it from a scientific perspective, which is really, really difficult, because if you look at the data from the IPCC, there is masses and masses and masses of data that has been collected over the last 30 years, because around that 1989 was when governments started to fund scientists of all types for specifically studying climate change. Or in those days, it was called the greenhouse effect and the ozone layer. And we apparently had a big hole in the ozone layer. I don't know where that went, but that's another subject altogether. So what used to be political activism in the environment, such as conservation, deforestation, soil erosion, feral animals, and pollution, all started to get funneled into collecting data for climate change, or the greenhouse effect, and looking at greenhouse gases and looking at how ecosystems were changing. And so just about every scientist you can think of, I don't know, maybe not physicists, but, all the earth sciences at least, and the biological sciences, have been funded and collecting data all across the globe for that 30 years. And that's now with the IPCC, most of it anyway, you can see that data. Now, the problem with that is we didn't ever collect that much data before, so there's not a lot of good comparison to make from pre-1990. And also the instruments we use to collect the data are a lot more precise than they used to be. So it's hard to compare, once again, a lot of the data to the old data that was done with different types of instruments. So all we can really do is look at what's been collected and say, okay, what's changed over the last 30 years and how quickly has it changed? And when you do look at that, you can get quite worried because and climate change is a misnomer. There has been climate change as well, but there's also been very big changes in ecosystems and also in geomorphic processes. So the things that usually create the crust of the earth and the changes in the actual soil and rocks and so forth, we've measured huge changes. In the Arctic, that's the one that I would point out to be the one that to be most worried about, because even if the debate is, oh, why is it changing? How are we changing it? It probably doesn't matter at this point. Those changes are so drastic and so unexperienced by our human population for probably, people are saying, 10,000 years. So that's alarm bells. And it's kind of like, it doesn't matter what's causing it.
Right.
That's going to impact us politically, economically, everything.
So let's agree that there has been substantive and observable change. And, the receding of the glaciers, the permafrosts melting, all of those things.
That's huge.
Forestation and all those things from natural or unnatural causes. Something has created, and the quantum of change that we've seen even in the last 30 years is something, the rate of change has not been anything like that previously.
That we've experienced. I'm not a great proponent of being able to say what happened 10,000 years ago when we weren't there, and that science is very complicated. So we can't say that it didn't happen quickly. I mean, I'm a little, with the permafrost in particular, because a lot of that was vegetation. It suddenly froze. It's possible that very fast changes have occurred before.
Right.
But the thing is, we weren't, us, 7 billion of us, with our, incredibly complicated economics and politics and the way we live, we're not living in that time. So if it's ever been fast before, we weren't there, so that doesn't even matter. Stop debating about all that. Just look at the fact that right now it's going bonkers. It's going completely bonkers.
So we can agree that it's changing, and it's changing fast. I guess then the next question is that a purely natural thing? And now people talk about, well, of course, the energy from the sun changes or whatever. Or can we more directly correlate it specifically to things that we have done to create that change? That's the real heart of the question, it seems to me.
We can't correlate it. There's looking at that, and if we take the IPCC data as the source of data that we all trust, even their data says that we can't really correlate it. I mean, they've put the data out and they've called it low to medium correlation. You can't, as a good scientist, you can't publish something with a low to medium confidence. It has to be very high confidence. And when you look at the data, it doesn't have very high confidence that they know how this has happened.
So that's really important, right? So because a lot of people would say, screaming from the tops of hills and mountains and things, saying, we've done that, it's our problem, we've created it, right? But the science really is saying there is potentially some correlation, but the correlation rates are not that high. That's an important point.
No, they're not. I wouldn't. You wouldn't pass your exam at uni if you put in a report with a low to medium confidence rate. I mean, really, no.
So is that lack of confidence and clarity then the source of a lot of the ambiguities that we're actually seeing? So we see some observable facts. There are some things that we may or may not be doing to accelerate or in some way change what's going on, but it's not a direct A to B relationship. That makes it complicated, doesn't it?
It's very complicated. I think that's why, yes, I agree with you. I think that's probably why people are arguing about it, because there are people who don't want to take responsibility for their own behavior anyway. And then there's or what happened 30 years ago with the environmental activists that I was involved with is that we thought, okay, this climate change thing kind of fits our agenda anyway. So whether or not it's true, we're going to push it because it helps stop pollution, it helps stop deforestation.
Right.
So there is that side of it where it's a little bit manipulated, I guess.
Well, I think that's a really interesting observation, because I was going to say exactly that. It seems to me that because of that ambiguity, you can have the people on the side of big energy and oil saying, well, there's no direct correlation, so we don't need to do anything. On the other side, if you are actually inclined to be aligned to green and all those things, then you're looking for evidence that will actually steer you in that direction, and you can harness it. So you can almost harness this data either way.
Yeah, you can.
So,
and people do. I mean, just flat out, they do.
So the ambiguity is there, and of course, then we have people saying we must act now because we've got a very short period of time left, and then it'll be too late. And the IPCC says you've got to keep the rate down to a certain level because otherwise, there's doom and gloom and everything else, right? On one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, they say, well, there's a few things, but a lot of it, may or may not be related. And what's actually happening is it's actually a set of forces which effectively are pushing back against effectively progress in the future and technology. And it's like we've got this sort of ideological debate going on between two potential futures, one of which is stop doing a lot of stuff, and the other which is, well, yeah, do stuff, but you may have to use technology differently to do the stuff you want to do. Again, that's another foggy debate, isn't it?
That's a foggy debate. It's a debate that I'm actually active in. I think philosophically for me, consumerism is I can't say the problem because I can't say it's causing effects, but consumerism is really problematic. And you didn't bring consumerism into that equation because the two things you talked about were like just staying as we are or going to a technological route.
Well, or turning, I was trying to make the point of turning away from some of the things we have been doing and effectively going to a simpler, more sustainable. So I was, I guess, implicitly thinking about consumerism and the fact that half the planet's eating 3 planets worth of stuff, right? Basically.
Oh, and I'm not even so worried about the eating as much as the Coles miniature plastic. Idiot things.
Yeah. No, I was using eating metaphorically, right?
Eating.
Overall, a small proportion of the global population is consuming well over their fair share of one planet, let alone 2, let alone 3, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the consumerism part of the problem, and part of that is the throwaway attitude. I always want a bigger, better one this year than I had last year. All of those things. And that, by the way, is directly linked to them back to commercial interests, to the idea of, selling new things all the time. And again, the marketing and all of that stuff that's cycling through that, right? So that's sort of what I mean by that. And there are people who say, that's unsustainable. We cannot go down that route. We can't continue to do that because basically we've got an ever-increasing population. There's 7 million now. How many billion? 7 billion now. How many billion in a couple of decades' time? And yet we've got the other people who haven't had the same fortune to say, well, we are, from a lifestyle perspective, we're way down here. We're trying to claw our way up to just getting electricity and basic food on the table and basic levels of prosperity. And yet you guys have actually been raiding the larder for years and years and years, right? Which then gives you that other dynamic too.
And I agree with that latter one because the Western world are the consumers, and even still now, like you said, there's people still just getting electricity. We need to take responsibility for our consumption. And one of the things that Australians say all the time is, our emissions are very small because we've got such a small carbon footprint. But that's not That's not true at all. They always blame, say, the Chinese manufacturing processes for the emissions. We're the ones buying that stuff,
Yeah.
as are the other Western world occupants. We're the ones who want a new iPhone every year. We're the ones who want the plastic Coles trivial. I mean, don't even start me on the consumerism side of us. So it is our fault. We do have to take responsibility for it. And we can't go blaming developing countries who are, they might be making more emissions than us, but they're doing it because we want stuff all the time. We want stuff. And we can't see our waste because we put it away somewhere where we can't see it. And we just keep on grabbing new things. It's not, I don't think it's a sustainable way of life at all.
But what's interesting that we've sort of shifted the conversation directly from climate change to effectively a broader issue about asset consumption across the planet, right?
I know, because it's just, obviously we both have a problem with that.
Well, it seems to me that's, the analogy I use, right, is that we're on this ship, right? And we're all on this ship, got nowhere else to go, right? The trouble is we've got people down the end who are actually starting to take the ship apart, and basically, the ship's getting a bit smaller and a bit more rickety, and we've still got more people on the ship, right? We've got nowhere else to go. At some point, that is going to end in disaster. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, but I reckon if the tundra is desiccated, like they say it is, and becomes on fire, we're going to be scrambling off that ship. I mean, it was like before we become 8 billion or 9 billion, I think what's happening in the Arctic is concerning prior to that, because already there's political arguments over transiting across the ships taking the oil from Russia to America. It's 15 days less than going the other way around through the Suez Canal. So Russia's going, we don't mind if the Arctic melts. We get to have better trips, cheaper trips across the top.
It goes back to those vested interests again and different perspectives, right? But one of the things that you're touching on, and it's the thing that I've been looking at a bit, these feedback loops, right? So effectively, we keep hitting tipping points, right? And the Arctic tundra is a good example of that, or the melting ice is another example of that. At some point, it doesn't naturally just swing back. Effectively, you get to a point where it starts accelerating away and it gets harder to fix. Another example would be sea level rise, right? And the fact that the seas are now more acid than they were, and that's changing the nature of the seas themselves. Some of those things are actually getting close to tipping points, which means that there's not a set of linear systems and processes here. There are a series of, if you like, logarithmic, U-shaped changes. And once you start going up the curve, then the context of that and the impact of that becomes very profound.
It's already started. That's what the data shows. Those changes in the ecosystems, especially with the marine ecosystems, that's already started. That's changing fisheries and all that type of thing. It's already happening. I would say in the last 10 years, these things have already reached their tipping point that you're talking about, and they've tipped over.
Right.
And it's been so fast. It's very perplexing from a scientific point of view, because I'm wondering whether in actual fact it started a lot longer before 1990 when we were told about it.
Right, because the measurement wasn't sufficient necessarily to pick it up earlier on?
Yeah, because the last 10 years have been so quick to tip. And we don't know. We don't know how it's going to end up. We don't know what's going to happen. Climate chaos is a really good phrase, because chaos is the most likely thing that happens when you cause problems in a dynamic, complex system like the Earth and its atmosphere and its relationship to the sun. That's a hugely complex system. We don't understand it. And chaos is the only option really for the description of how things will change, and that it's already happening. So how we deal with it now is what really is the problem.
Yes, well, I think that's exactly right. It's a very complicated set of systems and processes. We don't yet fully understand them, and in fact, one of the things I think is that there's a certain arrogance amongst some people who claim to understand how it all fits together. I think that's probably, a bit hubris inclined. I think there are lots
Yeah.
of things that we're not sure about. But what we do know is that there are some very alarming signs as to where this is heading. And I guess, if I think of the political environment here in Australia, right, and today's an interesting day to be having this conversation, because the
Oh,
International Energy Agency, international organisation, basically said we've got to close the gap between rhetoric and action, and we've got to do it quickly. And by the way, you shouldn't invest in any more oil or gas related things, right? And on the same day, we have our announcements here in Australia that we're going to actually invest in not one but two gas-fired power generating capacity, 300 and something megawatts down in the Illawarra and 660 megawatts in the Hunter Valley, both in New South Wales, right? Gas powered. And of course, gas is the most expensive of the generating capacities that we have. But of course, it's politically very attractive. So that's an example where politics and the reality in the long term gets completely eroded by short-term political decisions. And we're seeing a lot of that, I guess, in Australia.
and it annoys me so much that Australia is so far behind in technology. Like, I follow a lot of the American tech sort of, I guess it's a combination of people who are interested in technology and environment, and looking at using technological things like electromagnetism and all those different electronic things that apparently are available deep within, like, the say, hidden in the military research stations and so forth. And Elon Musk is one of the people who alludes to this a lot, that there are things that we can use for energy that don't involve gas, coal, or anything at all, but mainly based on sort of more electronic forces and electromagnetism. And I'm not a physicist, so I don't understand all these things, but I'm very interested in them. And so I tend to follow a lot of that information. And, they've got maglev, I think they've got maglev high-speed trains in Asia. And Elon Musk has been making, I think, a maglev train from Los Angeles to Las Vegas or something like that. I mean, they're using these technologies that we in Australia, with oh my God, I can't believe how far behind we are. We're just like little, and now because we're cut off from the world, because we're all the borders are shut, so we're just like these little fossils all sitting here going, oh, what's going to happen to us? I wonder. Oh, we'll just get on the train and go.
And the point is, of course, we had an ally in the US while Trump was in charge, but of course now that Biden's there and he's actually starting to make some quite significant noises with regard to tackling some of those issues. So Australia is becoming perhaps a little more isolated than previously in terms of its rather weird position. And of course, if you think of us internationally, the conference up in London later in the year, we're going to be right at one end of the spectrum, not the good end of the spectrum probably, compared with a lot of other countries. So there's some interesting dynamic there. It comes right back to the political agenda versus the strategic agenda. I don't see much strategy here in Australia about this stuff. And of course, we've had a lot of toing and froing, and people have lost their jobs over this, politically speaking. But I have to say that we are so far off the way we should be, and yet there's no real plan, there's no real vision thing, and everybody's just saying, well, we'll just use gas as an interim step until the technology emerges, and then we can jump on to the next thing, right? Very, very sort of myopic strategy, I think, in Australia.
And not accurate either, because there are technologies you can use. You don't have to use gas. You don't have to use coal. We don't have to use fuels. Like, there are like we have done a lot of solar technology and so forth, but why aren't we doing more of that? And why don't we have people communicating with technologists overseas who are really at the forefront of this stuff? And why aren't we doing it? Well, I thought we were supposed to be the I don't know, the clever country or something like that.
Yeah, that was
clever. We are a country, but we're not clever.
So, we've explored some of the dynamics, all right? And, the science is somewhat ambiguous. The challenges are huge. The linkages between activity is not necessarily clear. So, what do you say to, young kids growing up, today who will be
Greta.
thinking, yeah, well, like Greta, and other people, because some of them have frightening clarity about how they see things, right? Many others will say, well, it's just I can't get my head around it, right? What do you say to the next generation as to how to think about it, and well, I guess who has what responsibilities to try and sort of steer it in the right direction?
I don't think you should put any responsibilities on children. I don't think anyone under the age of 21 should have any responsibilities. Like, to put angst onto children and fear into children is just wrong, full stop. So I don't agree with any of that kind of thing.
Right.
But getting them into the subjects and disciplines and study that's going to help us, but kindly, without frightening them, steering them into the right technological needs or whatever we decide that, is important for them to study. I don't know what those answers are, but we've got to do it gently. You can't go around giving them nervous breakdowns. And so we have a whole generation of people who are completely exhausted by all the fear that we've given them. How are they going to get the energy to make decisions? How are they going to get the energy to study and create new technologies if we destroy them by frightening them to death? Greta and her people are using a very emotionally manipulative style. And I think, I can understand where that comes from, but I don't think it's helpful. I would prefer to, let's be adults in the room, keep calm, steer the kids in the right direction, and don't upset them too much.
Right, but you've used the term adults in the room, and of course, one of her famous quotes was, well, we've left it to the adults in the room and they've done absolutely nothing. They're just going spinning their wheels and going around in circles. So,
that's insulting to adults like me who try our very best to do stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are...
she's a bit of a giggle, isn't she, with it? How dare you? I'm like, well, mate, before you were born, I was very busy doing stuff. So,
and I was going to say exactly that. I know a number of people who have been actively involved in this whole issue for a long, long time, and it's not simple. It's not straightforward, and yet there is a case for thinking about it differently and acting differently. And as I've hinted earlier on, some of that's because of the political overlays that influence decisions. I also think that the might of big business and how they actually lobby is also very significant as well. And of course, there are vested interests in keeping the status quo, and making sure that nothing moves too far from how things currently are. Yet on the other hand, my own sense is that there are critical decisions that we should be taking to try and actually steer us in a slightly different direction and relatively quickly, because the fact of the matter is there isn't a huge amount of time left before some of the accelerations and some of those tipping points are irreversible, and then we end up with a much poorer and less majestic planet we have an environment that is less pleasant to be living in, there are probably going to be more people who will be not able to get the food or the water or the other things that they need. And it also potentially can lead to broader conflict, right? Because
I
effectively,
think so.
with scarce resources, with a growing number of people around the world, and more desperation, you can see how this could play out. And a sidebar, of course, the lockdowns over the last year did actually reduce emissions a little bit, but not that dramatically, right? And they've all come back. So it suggests that the way that we actually are doing things at the moment is definitely creating significant emissions out. Now, whether those emissions are directly linked to what they're seeing with the observable facts, I don't know. But it seems to me that that's part of what we should be thinking about. So time is short. There are things we have to do. And I guess then the question is, well, politicians, is there a vote in it? What do you think? Is there a vote in this?
Oh, gee, I'm really disappointed with Australians. I'm sorry. Well, especially today, there was some kind of poll where 80% of the Australians were happy that our borders are closed so that we can't let people in who might, give us a disease. That's a very conservative population. I don't think they're going to vote for, the dynamic change that we need.
Right.
I think we're in a very conservative population.
Yes. Well, I think there's a two acts. I talk about this sometimes. There's this she'll be right attitude, which is the sun's shining, the beach is looking pretty good. I'll just go down and have a surf, right? And but never mind those big picture issues. And there is some of that, right? And there is also the other end of the spectrum, which is that the political debate in Australia has been significantly devalued over the last decade. I think that it's very hard to have a really strategic conversation about anything. It always comes back down to sort of backbiting and just sort of tactical.
They just yell at each other.
Exactly, right. And unfortunately, as a result of that, some of the important issues just don't get tackled well. And look, sidebar. The NBN is a great example of a thing that could have been remarkably amazing if it had been put in right, but then of course it got completely messed up halfway through, and now we've got this sort of thing which sort of half works and half doesn't work. I mean, that seems to be unfortunately what we often end up doing.
Yeah. We're the slowest in the world or something for an NBN. So
I know. I know.
I don't understand whether we're just an outpost of where people are being parked in order to, just keep the pasture green until someone's ready to kind of take over or something like that. I don't know what they're doing with us, really.
Interesting view. So we're just here temporarily until the real adults arrive.
Yeah, until they're finished with their northern hemisphere, they'll come down here and say, "Oh, thanks for babysitting that bit for us," because. Yeah, it's silly. And the other thing is, 30 years ago, politically, before globalization, people were able to get things done in Australia. I was involved in Wilderness Society and Conservation Foundation and all those types of things. And we had activist programs for various specific local projects, and we were able to get change. And the Franklin Dam is obviously a very well-known activity that got political attention and had something was done. But once globalization started, and this is kind of why I say we're a little bit of an outpost, is once globalization really got its teeth in, political activity in Australia has come to a halt. There's no influence. There's no connection here anymore. You can't get things done. You can't be radical and negotiate with the government because they're not interested anymore. They're getting big money from all the globalists, it drives me crazy. But I think we are here to kind of do what I said before, just like provide. We're like a customer of the big companies, and so our political interests are not of any interest at all, because those big European countries, big American companies who can use our socialist government to sell products to our government and then create them for us to take, like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. That kind of system has put a big kibosh on all the political activity that used to go on. It was really interesting before. It was really active and dynamic, but nothing these days.
Well, it's rather confined to YouTube channels and other small voices now.
Yeah,
right.
I know, and it's not the same as getting in, having a good negotiation with those politicians face to face. And
So, look, we're coming to the end of our conversation. But what is the one message that you'd want to sort of deliver to the viewers, having gone through this conversation? What is the one thing you'd want to say to them?
Well, think about your responsibilities and think about what you consume, because we don't have a lot that we can do about what's going on in the big picture. And understanding there are definitely earth changes happening. It's not just climate change, it's earth changes. They're definitely happening, and they're definitely worrying and scary. But control what you can control, and do make a difference in your life by not consuming so much. Thinking about what you're doing. Don't buy that stuff with all the packaging. If we stop buying things, they stop making them. They need us to. They really need us to buy them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be making them at all. So that's my.
That's a really interesting point, because what you're basically saying is this is a bottom-up thing, right? This is do the things that you can do differently, right? And maybe all that big picture stuff, well, it'll sort itself out or not. But the point is, there are things that we can do, week in, week out, day in, day out. And as you say, look at the packaging, look at what you buy when you buy it, and frankly, don't play the marketeers' games, because the marketeers are just wanting to sell you more and more and more stuff, right? And sometimes maybe last year's iPhone or last year's whatever it is works reasonably well, and
of course it does. I'm talking to you on a 10-year-old computer, so and it's working fine.
And that's an object lesson, right? Actually, my camera is, the one I'm using today is relatively old, and the other stuff I'm using was all secondhand in the first place. So
there you go.
Look, I found that a really interesting but also challenging conversation, because I think what you've done for me is to highlight a lot of the ambiguities, which always knew were out there, and I want to say thank you for that. But also, I think your simple message there, in terms of there are things that we can do locally, that's a really, really important message. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's fine.